The fate of your favorite beach is likely to be determined during the course of 4 upcoming public hearings to be held by the Obama administration during the first 2 weeks of April. President Obama's new Secretary of Interior, Ken Salazar, will be traveling around the country to listen to public testimony on offshore drilling and coastal renewable energy proposals in San Francisco, Atlantic City, New Orleans, and Anchorage. Your voice has never been more important to determining the future of America's shoreline and coastal waters than it is right now. A few days before leaving office, former President George W. Bush issued an aggressive draft offshore drilling plan that targets the entire Atlantic coast for oil rigs, only 3 miles from shore, as well as the coast of California and Florida's Gulf Coast for nearshore drilling. Interior Secretary Salazar has put that controversial last-minute Bush drilling plan on a temporary hold by extending the public comment period for an additional 180 days, putting off any decision he himself might consider until this September. Now, at these public hearings, we need to directly engage Interior Secretary Salazar and his generous offer to come and hear what the public has to say in the coastal areas that will be most affected by the offshore drilling plans previously proposed by President Bush. All along the Atlantic coast, offshore drilling would target the rich fisheries of Georges Bank and the Gulf of Maine, the shores of New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, nearshore waters only 3 miles from the mouth of Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, North Carolina's spectacular Outer Banks, and Georgia's Sea Island coasts, plus, for the first time, even the east coast of Florida, in addition to the white sugar sand beaches of Florida's Gulf Coast and Panhandle. Along the southern California coast, the Bush drilling plan specifically targets the waters within Santa Monica Bay, near Malibu, around the Palos Verdes Peninsula, along all of the Orange County coastline and close to shore off of La Jolla, as well as much of the sensitive Mendocino and Humboldt County coastlines. The Gulf Coast of Florida, now protected by law, would be open to nearshore drilling if the Bush plan is adopted, even within waters set aside by painstakingly negotiated bipartisan legislation passed by Congress and adopted in 2006, which protects the waters off of Tampa Bay out to 234 miles from shore, and most of the rest of the Florida Panhandle and Gulf Coast not less than 150 miles from shore, until at least 2022. At the upcoming public hearing to be held in New Orleans, testimony pushing for offshore drilling rigs close to shore on Florida's Gulf Coast will no doubt be sponsored by the oil industry, an improbable move that would require new congressional intervention in order to remove the current bipartisan compromise protection now in place for the Gulf Coast and seriously complicate any future Interior Department efforts to reach accord with other coastal states. For the past 27 years, a bipartisan annual congressional moratorium was renewed each year in Washington to protect America's coastal natural treasures, and it had the concurrence of 3 presidents. Last year, during the 2008 election cycle, in the face of tens of millions of dollars of lobbying by Big Oil and a Republican political campaign slogan of "Drill, Baby, Drill," that translated at the polls in November into "Lose, Baby, Lose," that long-standing congressional protection was allowed to lapse without a congressional vote one way or the other. Now the Obama administration is in charge of America's coast, and the White House and Interior Secretary Salazar both have said that they want to emphasize the advantages of the construction of offshore renewable energy facilities over the helter-skelter leasing of our coastal waters for oil and gas development. Carbon-based fuels, now notorious for their proven contribution to destructive global climate warming, are clearly dangerous to the survival of life on Earth. Even renewable energy facilities like offshore wind farms and wave energy arrays will require careful planning that must accommodate sensitive areas and existing ocean uses like commercial fishing grounds. These upcoming public hearings are your way of determining the health of our coast for future generations, and deciding whether our coastal economies based on fishing and tourism will survive, and whether society's continued addiction to carbon-based fuels like oil and gas will destroy life on Earth by further altering our climate. Please join us at the hearing location nearest you, where the morning proceedings begin at 9 a.m., with a statement by Interior Secretary Ken Salazar to be followed by the hearing of public testimony throughout the day, with breaks for lunch and dinner, with each after working hours, evening hearing resuming at 6 p.m. and adjourning at 8 p.m. The hearings will be held at the Atlantic City Convention Center on Monday, April 6th, 1 Convention Center Boulevard, Atlantic City, New Jersey. In New Orleans at Tulane University on Wednesday, April 8, 2009 in McAlister Auditorium, Building 43, McAlister Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana. In Anchorage, in Alaska, at the Dena'ina Civic and Convention Center on Tuesday, April 14th, at 600 West 7th Avenue in Anchorage. And finally, in San Francisco on Thursday, April 16th, at the University of California, San Francisco Mission Bay Conference Center in the Robertson Auditorium at 1675 Owens Street in San Francisco. Please join us in a chorus of coastal voices so that our ocean can survive for our grandchildren.